Hello and welcome to Save Our Sperrins podcast, Voices from the Frontline. This podcast shares the stories, reflections and campaign of those standing up to protest one of Ireland's most precious landscape, the Sperrin Mountains. Across these episodes, you'll hear from people rooted in the land, farmers, artists, teachers, scientists and citizens, each with their own reason for speaking out against gold mining and extractivism. These are not just campaigners, they are caretakers, storytellers, stewards of the landscape and protectors of place. Together, their voices form a powerful reminder that this is not a protest of one community, one ideology or one generation, but a shared stand for what matters. Today, I'm joined by V'cenza Cirefice, an environmental educator, researcher and activist whose work bridges ecology, community and creative expression. V'cenza has been involved in grassroots campaigns across Ireland and beyond, exploring how art, storytelling and education can inspire deeper connections to the land and empower communities to protect it. She has long been a supporter and activist within the Save Our Sperrins campaign, standing with us and contributing her valuable voice and work over the years. I'm really looking forward to hearing her insights and the stories she has to share. Welcome, V'cenza. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And let's just get into it and see where the conversation takes us. So firstly, who are you and where do you feel most at home?
Hi, Marilla, and thanks so much for having me on the podcast. My name's V'cenza, and I would describe myself as an activist, an organizer, and an artist. And I'm from the Mourne Mountains in South Down, and yeah, that's definitely where I feel the most connected to and the most at home.
And are you there right now?
I am, yes, I'm here at my family's farm in the mountains, yeah.
And can you see the mountains?
I can, yeah, I can see Binion from my house, which is, yeah,
Oh,
a beautiful mountain. Yeah.
that's lovely. I'm slightly envious.
Ah.
We live here at the bottom of Mullincarn, and while I can't see it, it's less than half a mile away from me to walk up the
Oh,
sides of Mullincarn. So
beautiful.
much appreciate living in that kind of country.
Mhm.
How did you find your way into the kind of work that you do? And was it through community or activism or indeed academia or something else entirely?
Yeah, so I think I've always been interested in like ecological questions or like environmentalism from quite a young age, because my family they run like a regenerative farm, so I think that was kind of always around me. But it was really when I was like in my late teen age that I got involved in a solidarity campaign with communities in the Niger Delta that were resisting Shell. And that was really, I think, whenever I got very involved in the idea of like environmental justice, like the idea about it's actually communities and it's human rights and it's social justice that and questions of power and corporate power and all of these things that are so central to the climate crisis and environmentalism. And yeah, after that, I went on to be very involved in different sort of climate movements and environmental justice movements in Ireland and the UK and internationally as well. But I think it was really when I lived in Cyprus for a year and I was living with a community that was resisting gold mining there, actually, that really opened my eyes to sort of the very kind of like grounded struggles that communities are in, and how connected these issues are, the different like yeah, the different similarities between communities all across the world fighting this fight. So when I came back to Ireland and I saw the same thing happening in the Sperrins, yeah, I was very keen to get involved.
Yeah, it was a very natural step for you.
Mm.
I want to ask you just to come back to, would you explain what regenerative farming is for our podcast listeners?
Yeah, so I guess it's a type of farming that really centers like a care for the land and the animals that you work with and the farmers, the people working the land as well, as opposed to, I guess, yeah, farming that's all about extracting as much as possible. And under the current systems that we have, it's very difficult, I guess, to have that kind of setup. So yeah, yeah, I think there's lots of people trying to do it across the island, which is very inspiring.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost as if you got it in your blood that you couldn't avoid your future.
Couldn't escape. Yeah.
On a related note, you've been using counter mapping as part of your work in the Sperrins. And for those who haven't come across that term before, what is counter mapping and how does it work in practice on the ground?
Came across counter mapping during my PhD project that I was really lucky to do with communities in the Sperrins about resistance to extractivism. And it kind of came up as an arts-based approach to looking at these things, these questions. And I thought that the idea of mapping was so central to how extractive companies like position themselves and like basically represent the places that they want to extract from. So reclaiming maps and creating our own maps, which is essentially what counter mapping is a really important tool of resistance to that. Um, so basically what we did was we with different communities across the Sperrins, we created yeah, our own maps based on what was important to the people who actually lived there and engaged with the landscape and these places and have a lot of different knowledge and stories and history and experiences to share. And these are all the things that are erased whenever either the state or the company want to move in and basically, yeah, extract whatever they want to extract from an area. So, yeah, I felt like it was a powerful tool for pushing back against that.
You might say you were almost reclaiming the narrative. Would you describe counter mapping as that?
I would describe it as like a counter narrative, really, to like what has been called the extractive gaze. It's a view from above that kind of just sees these blank landscapes that are just empty and waiting to be turned into a profit-making kind of project. But yeah, we're creating the narrative that that's not the reality on the ground, that people like love and live and struggle in these spaces as well.
It kind of makes me wonder how might a counter map shift the power or change how we see a place like this?
Yeah, I think yeah, the question of power is really central. And I think that yeah, they need to be made by the people who are actually like engaging with these places and living there. So it's a way for people to tell their own stories rather than it being told from the outside. Yeah, so it's a way, I think, of reclaiming that. Yeah, it's a way of saying that these areas are actually full of abundance and they're like value and how we measure value can be done in different ways. So yeah, I find it like a very powerful tool, especially when you're confronting like corporate power and the power of the state.
In relation to this podcast recently, I had occasion to just look up some of the history around the area, the Sperrins, particularly the area known as Montalona,
Mm,
and I was absolutely fascinated to hear the history of the O'Neills, I think it was, and how
mm,
they were based there and how they left Ireland forever with the flight of the Earls up the Green Road. Really, that was possibly the last sort of, in parentheses, High King of Ulster, who was there, or his father was there for 30 odd years. And yeah, it was just, and then this just a whole sort of tradition of Gaelic speaking and a particular dialect of Gaelic not found in any other part of Ireland, really, all in this area. So when you're using sort of counter mapping, I'm sure that brings that to the
mm.
fore. I'm sure you've unearthed some very interesting things about the Sperrins.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, all of those stories you just mentioned there were things that came up, and yeah, there's so much rich knowledge, in the place and different different connections through the Irish language and place names and all of that. But I think it's really interesting as well when you think about how mapping's been used like historically in Ireland, it was really developed, I think, here as a colonial tool to, turn the land into like a plantation or, something that we can extract from for capital accumulation. And it would then was like those techniques were exported all around the world. So yeah, I think that that kind of like colonial mapping, like it's still seen today in the way the land's mapped like through the TELUS survey,
Yes.
for the to facilitate these companies coming in and extracting minerals. And, looking at the historic maps of the Sperrins is super interesting as well because, like, they're just labeled mountains to the west. There's no actual, all the beautiful names of the mountains and the areas and everything is just totally wiped over. And even thinking about the Munterlony, how they were described in Westminster, in reports as the wild and barbarous lands and people of Munterlony, I think those narratives are still very much alive in how the extractive companies try to portray the place today. So yeah, very interesting to think about all those things.
Yeah, I suppose when you map a place, you can measure it and then you can begin to control it. And even today, in even in this planning application that's gone in, somebody had the temerity to refer to some of the streams or burns as unnamed waterways. Ridiculous. Everything in Ireland has a name.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unnamed almost belies its right to exist. In the past, we've lost the Gaelic language, which removed the right of the people to exist almost. People loses its language, it loses everything, And
Exactly.
and it's exactly the same as you say, colonialization and the same techniques, and they're still being used all over the world. And we see it being carried out even in Gaza today. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's a very wonderful deep subject mapping, and
Mhm.
just and for our listeners, can you explain a little bit what the TELUS survey is?
Yeah, sure. It's a mapping project that's been happening since I think 2004, so for quite a long time. And it's like funded by the state North and South through Geological Survey Northern Ireland and Geological Survey Ireland. And it's using small aircraft to like deeply map the whole island of Ireland geologically. And I think they say, whenever it's done, Ireland will be the most deeply mapped country in the world, geologically speaking. So it's a really significant project and it has been used really as part of the like big welcome to extractive companies to come and mine here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty clear explanation. All right. Moving on, that brings me to something else I've been wanting to ask you. You also use creative tools like photo voice and visual storytelling. Can you tell us a little bit about these approaches and also how they unlock more traditional campaign, or where how they unlock things that more traditional campaigns or academic methods might not?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think these tools are super connected to the counter mapping. They kind of like all kind of complement each other. But the photo voice is a tool, a feminist and participatory tool that's basically again about reclaiming the voices of people who are most affected by an issue. So the idea is that I introduced it to people in the Sperrins and asked them to go away and to take photos of their experience of resistance. And then we held workshops over the next few months where we kind of told the stories behind the photos. And then we started to like theme and group the photos. And those themes informed my PhD project then. So it's, I guess, a way of designing and doing the project together with people who are impacted. And then we managed to have a couple of exhibitions of the beautiful work that people took in Derry and Belfast then afterwards. But yeah, it was really amazing to do this project and to see like the huge variety of images that came forward from people, and they spoke to like so many different themes that are present in the campaign. And yeah, I really learned a lot from doing this. But I think that these tools are super important because we're trying to say, you know, that like more conventional ways of doing things, you know, they do like, yeah, they bring a lot as well, but it's these tools that maybe make us think differently about things, or maybe broaden our perspective on what resistance actually is, that can help us, I guess, yeah, think differently and maybe approach it from a different angle as well.
Yeah, I believe I was at one or two of those exhibitions in Belfast, and I was just really impressed at the time.
Oh.
I don't think I ever got talking to you about it subsequently, but yeah, I thought, this is really powerful work going on here. But
Mm.
just to dig a little bit deeper,
Mhm.
what have you seen emerge in the Sperrins through this kind of creativity and collaboration?
Yeah, I think some of the big things I took away was this idea of like how wide the sense of community was. So like it wasn't just about the people who live there, but it's very much about the land as well, and about the, I would call it like the more than human beings that live there too. It's really like widening our sense of community to in like to also include like the bog and the streams and the trees and the rivers. And yeah, I think that's really powerful and really beautiful. And also, I think sometimes in like campaigning, we can get caught up in protests and writing letters and petitions, and all of that's super important. But what I sort of saw emerge through the project was a focus on care and building relationships with each other, and all of the things like going for walks together and like having a picnic on the mountain and spending time getting to know each other, that is all part of the resistance, and that came through really strongly in the project, which I thought was really inspiring.
Yeah, we had a comment recently about our campaign that there seemed to be a depth of relationships right
Mm.
across all of the characters within the campaign. And I had to agree with them, just exactly as you remarked, your work built relationships, and nothing gets done really without relationship. A relationship has to be established before any work gets done. Yeah, we were grateful for the work that you did around that, and helping us build towards those all important relationships. Building on what you just said, in your experience, what can art do, especially when it's rooted in community, that legal language or data sometimes cannot?
Great question. And I think it makes me think a lot about the quote by Audre Lorde, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. I think that, yeah, we need different ways of doing things, different ways of seeing, different ways of being and relating to each other, because like the thing that we're resisting here, extractivism, it's actually about relationship. It's about a very specific way of relationship that's about taking and not giving anything back, about enclosing and destroying and rupturing things. So whenever we do things in a way that builds different relationships, like you talked so powerfully about there, you know, that is the resistance. And I think that art and yeah, visual storytelling, all of this stuff is a really important tool in creating that, and also connecting in with like emotions as well, you know. It's all these things that have been devalued by the systems that we're up against. And yeah, like relationship, emotion, things that are valued or like seen as kind of like soft. These are actually, I think, where the power lies. And yeah, these kind of more creative tools allow us to get to that, and they allow us to speak a different language, I guess. And it's one that the system doesn't really know how to come back up against because yeah, it doesn't know how to respond to that, I think.
Great, great answer there. You mentioned saying there, and I wasn't familiar with it at all. And I wonder if you could just explain it a little bit more. The master's tool will never dismantle the master's house.
Yeah, it's a saying that the systems that we're trying to fight are built using some very specific tools. So whether that's like supremacy or like hierarchy or like domination or aggression. And so whenever we want to take down the house, we have to think about doing things completely differently. So
All right.
we're not trying to like smash a window. We're taking the whole house down, you know. So we want
I get
to,
it.
yeah, we want to think about like organizing in different ways, building relationships in different ways, building campaigns in totally different ways.
So would you see that way of relating as something beyond just people, as a form of resistance in itself?
I think so because I think the systems that I'm talking about, they see the world around us as just like dead matter, you know, like as just like dead resource. The mountain's just a dead resource that we can basically like dig up and extract whatever we want from. That's like the worldview that, you know, that system is built on.
Huh?
So whenever we start to see the land around us as like living and the more than human world as having agency, being part of our communities, needing to be have a voice at the table as well. And that's, I guess, what the rights of nature movement's doing very powerfully at the minute. I think that's whenever, yeah, I think that's a really important part of the struggle for sure.
Yeah, you're right about the rights of nature. It seems to be on everyone's tongue. It's even turning up on the television for people to
Mm.
still look at it, and
Yeah.
maybe 5 years ago, people wouldn't have known what the rights of nature was about. It's great that it's coming into mainstream conversation. More and more people are getting on board with it. That gives me hope. I like
Yeah.
your idea, what I would call the commodification of nature. It's just been treated as a commodity
Hmm.
to be used and reduced, spat out at the other end. It's much more than a commodity, and it's taken us a long time to realize that. Bringing people into a different mindset where we are part of nature and nature is part of us, and we can't just live isolated from nature and all the things that support us, because it is the fresh air we breathe, the clean water, pure water we drink, and the healthy soil that we eat from,
Hmm.
which really is the backbone of life on Earth. If we continue to destroy it uh, ad nauseum, we're going to be very quickly in trouble.
Absolutely. Yes.
And once we begin to understand that we're not separate from nature, then how we treat it and how we be in the world changes as a result of that. So there's less commodification. Though I have to confess, we're a long way from that point yet, but we
That's
keep
it.
on keeping on.
We keep trying for sure.
You've been involved in what you call horizontal learning and movement building. And for anyone not familiar with that approach, what does that mean and what does it look like in action on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties in directly to what we were talking about, you know, about different ways of relating, and needing to like practice the futures that we want in the present, you know. And so yeah, if we're talking about building like a future like of liberation and like moving beyond extractivism, I think we have to embody that like in the present. And I think that the relationships within our movements are really important spaces where we can practice that. And so, like some of the movements that I'm involved in practice this idea of like non-hierarchy. So, there would be, I guess, like more horizontal relationships, like power. There's still power dynamics for sure, but like we're just trying to be really like aware of that and how that shows up in our group dynamics because yeah, it's in our personal relationships and in our group relationships that these systems can show up as well. So we have to be really aware of that and try to counter that. So I guess in groups that might look like having more like rotating roles rather than having leadership concentrated with a few people. It means being really conscious about like who's doing the most work and trying to support each other. yeah, trying to just like think about power all the time and how it shows up in these relationships.
Oh, that's a really powerful insight. Is it difficult to hold on to those values, particularly in your traditional academic setting, and then out in the wider world? You could just take the two questions separately if you wanted, you know.
I think that like we're all conditioned by the society and the systems that we live under, and those behaviors show up in all of us. I think that that's totally normal, and yeah, it's something we just have to be aware of. But I think especially with academia, it's such a hierarchical kind of system, and I find it hard to be in that system, and I think that there's a lot of research that is quite extractive itself, of communities, especially like marginalized communities. And I was really conscious of that when I was doing the project, and I think that's why the tools of photo voice and counter mapping helped, because it kind of like decentered me as like I didn't want to come in and be like I'm an expert in any way. I was just really there to facilitate the discussions and the work, because the real experts were the people on the ground. I was there to learn from. That's not always what happens within academia, unfortunately, and it's almost like, communities can be mined for their knowledge and their experiences, So I think that keeping that conversation going is really important in academia, and really reflecting on how those dynamics show up.
Yeah, I like your reference to community has been mined for
Yeah.
for lots of information and experiences. So I think that leads us naturally to the next thing. What do you say the people of the Sperrins might have taught you about resistance or about care, or indeed what it means to defend a place like this? And I know you would have had experience in other communities in the world, but and just in reference to the Sperrins, really, is there anything that sort of stands out for you?
Yeah, there's honestly so much.
Oh,
It's
right.
so much. I feel like, yeah, it's been a real privilege, like, to like walk alongside the campaign, because it's it's so full of heart. It's like you said, like there's so much rich relationship building in there happening, that even though, there's also, like tensions and like difficulties as well within relationships, and that's totally normal. But I think overall there's like a real sense of care towards each other, which is yeah, really, really inspiring. And as well, I think the role of humor in the campaign has been fantastic. And yeah, like it's also like art, it's another thing that the system doesn't know how to deal with, because it's a different language, and it just diffuses everything. It's such a great tool. And also I think one of the big ones for me is like the international solidarity that's been built through the campaign. And I've been lucky to be involved with a few different like big sort of solidarity visits, like the Zapatistas in 2021, and the Making Relatives Collective, Indigenous people from the Brazilian Amazon who've been over. Um, but yeah, just to see all of those links being made in really amazing and very sensitive ways as well. So like, acknowledging that like we all have different contexts, and that, it's a different experience resisting mining in the north of Ireland than it might be in Mexico or Brazil. But we can find the commonalities, and build the solidarity across those differences, to make a really strong, like, international movement, because I think that's what we need in the face of these big corporations and these big systems that we're dealing with. I think that is like really, really inspiring, just to see people really embrace that, know so much now about so many different parts of the world, learn from each other as well.
Yeah, okay. We're fortunate in the campaign. There's more than a few people with a great sense of humor.
Yes.
And humor seems to rise to the fore, particularly when we're very stressed.
Yes.
It comes and it just reveals itself. And there's always a funny moment. And I just think that's great. Interestingly, before this interview, I interviewed Mary Lawler, the
Oh,
rapporteur for the United Nations for Environmental Defenders. And she remarked on how we had built solidarity with other groups across the globe,
Mm.
how important that was, and to keep expanding and connecting and on those. Because she says, as you might imagine, and as you rightly pointed out, Vincenza, fighting a gold mine here in the Sperrins in Northern Ireland is a whole different ball game from fighting it in Brazil or in the Congo, wherever else there's extractive mining going on, and there's a lot less human rights. But we're all connected, we're all on the one earth, and what's done to the air and the water and the soil there is also being done to the air and the water and the soil here, eroding the very life that supports us all, and it just does not make sense at any level. Let me see from there. Oh yeah, was there a standout moment in our campaign that you can say, oh yeah, I really remember that, or I'll never forget it, or an image or something somebody said, but something that really stayed with you?
Yeah, oh gosh, there's been so many amazing moments. I think one of the first times that I visited the GPO really stands with me. It was after the council had like given an eviction notice, and there was a caravan placed in the trees, and a kind of celebration party, a barbecue was being held, and I remember being there, and there was just like, yeah, there was just so much crack and solidarity, and people had traveled from all around Ireland, and I think I'd come with an activist from Bolivia, so it was really like international as well at that event. But it was just, yeah, it was just amazing, and yeah, from that moment, I kind of knew that this was like a really special campaign that was like quite different from other things I'd been involved in, you know. Yeah, it was that was really a standout moment, I think for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that caravan is notorious. Well, there's three caravans on the site, the one in the tree and then the two on the ground. Fortunately, in the last storm, the one in the tree got a fierce rattle. But anyways, we still have the two on the ground, and who knows what'll happen in the future. But it definitely is a standout moment for me also. Before we finish, I wanted to ask if you could offer one thought or encouragement to other communities resisting extractivism, what might it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think this idea of like getting to know each other super well is so important, and that's the foundation of everything, but also getting to know the land you're on really well, and like building that intimacy with place is like very, very important. Yeah, and I think that's the work that Save Our Sperrins and people across the Sperrins have been doing is, yeah, getting to remember the stories, to relearn the history, to yeah, even just walk on the land again that's been threatened, and put our bodies on it. I think that these are all like really important types of resistance that we often kind of overlook. And whenever we're like deeply rooted in place, you know, I think the resistance is unstoppable.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. And one last question I'd love to hear your thoughts on. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is, I think, not, yeah, like not thinking about what victory is like. In the same way. You know, I think sometimes we can think about winning as looking a specific way, but I think if we think about winning as, yeah, these relationships that we're building, and these sort of everyday connections and these, yeah, these smaller things, I think gives me a lot of hope because I can see it like happening before my eyes, you know, these transformations, and doing it together, like in this collective way. Yeah, it gives me a huge amount of hope because we live in a very like very scary, worrying times, I think. But whenever, yeah, whenever we have each other and we have this solidarity, that definitely keeps me going.
Thank you so much for coming onto this podcast, for adding your voice to the campaign and helping in your own way to deepen relationships right across the Sperrins. We are so grateful. Thank you for speaking with us today, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to talk with you. Bye.
That was such an inspiring chat with V'cenza. She's been with us through so much in this campaign, always bringing her creativity, insight, and courage to the table. And I'm so grateful she could share that with all of us today. If you enjoyed this conversation or it gave you something to think about, please follow the podcast and share it. Every listen, every share helps. These voices travel further and strengthens the movement to protect the sperrins. Thanks for being here, and until next time, let's keep looking after each other and the places we call home.